moments in sports history that transcend the game itself, where a single performance redefines greatness. This was one of those moments. 1993. All fans of the now worldwide exported NBA await expectantly the outcome of a historic clash. In a series that would define the legacy of two players forever, every outcome was possible. The Phoenix Suns had achieved the best record in the entire association, and now they hope to win a championship ring for the first time in history. But to do so, they would have to beat an indomitable force. Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls were no longer that team you wanted to cross paths with in the playoffs. They were no longer that team where, if you concentrated all your defensive power on their star, they were easily beatable. There were two reasons for this. The first, the arrival of talents like Scottie Pippen, who served as a luxury supporting cast for the best player in the world. And second, the evolution of Michael Jordan himself. He was no longer a scorer. He had become a versatile player capable of everything. With 2 championship rings on his back, he knew that nothing could stop his three-peat. He had to do it for himself, for his hunger to win, but above all, for a reason he didn't know himself yet. The Bulls were a fearsome team, not because of their regular season results, where they were capable of racking up 55-plus win seasons as if it were the easiest thing in the world, but because in the last 2 postseasons, they had a combined record of 30 wins and 9 losses. No team managed to beat them in a series from 1991 to the timeline of our history, and only the Miami Heat managed to win 3 games. In the 1992-1993 regular season, a year in which Mchale led the league in points and steals per game, with 32.6 and 2.8 respectively, Chicago had done the usual: win by inertia. They managed to win 57 out of 82 games, ranking as the second best offense and 7th best defense in the NBA. Those Bulls were a team that knew how to take care of the ball, loaded the offensive rebounding, and played very slowly. After dominating the league for 2 seasons, Jordan and Chicago were beginning to write the rules, and their style of play would eventually become the trend. They were the forerunner of the dead ball era, where low pace became one of the hallmarks of the NBA. But Jordan had only one goal in mind: win a 3rd consecutive ring. The dream of the three-peat seemed impossible because, in the league at that time, nobody was able to do it. It was very difficult to maintain consistency in an era that was becoming more and more competitive. In fact, winning three-peats seemed a thing of the past, something that would never be repeated. Since Bill Russell did it with the Celtics from 1964 to 1966, no one believed it was even possible. Chicago, of course, was confident in their chances, and they dominated their conference in the 1993 playoffs. First, they beat Dominique Wilkins' Atlanta Hawks in 3 games, then the Cavs of Brad Daugherty, Larry Nance, and Mark Price in 4, and finally, Reggie Miller's Indiana Pacers in the conference finals. There was only one team capable of destroying their dreams. Of course, we're talking about the Phoenix Suns of Charles Barkley, Dan Marley, Kevin Johnson, and Richard Dumas. The Suns not only had a really solid starting 5, but they also had 2 players who finished in the top 5 in the race for 6th Man of the Year. Danny Ainge and Tom Chambers added depth to a dream roster. Phoenix had 62 wins in the regular season, 5 more than the Bulls, and their style of play was incredibly eye-catching for the fans. The Suns were not only the 4th fastest team in the league in terms of pace, but they were also the most efficient offense, an explosive mix that helped them create a style that completely countered that of Jordan's Bulls. If Suns players could run, score in transition, and impose their style of play as they had done all season long, the Bulls would be in trouble, to the point that many considered them as the favorites to win the finals. That's why expectations were at an all-time high. When June 9, 1993, the date of the first game of the series, finally arrived, no one wanted to miss this event, because what was going to happen on the court was going to become first-ballot NBA history. It was one of those moments that would mark an athlete's career. Against an incredibly talented team, Michael Jordan had to get the ring. He had to do it for his father. Not that there was anything wrong with him. James R. Jordan watched the game like everyone else. He watched as his son, in front of a hostile Phoenix crowd, get 31 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 steals in Game 1. He could score off the dribble, on difficult shots from mid-range. He could also knock down looks with just seconds on the clock when his team was in a bind. Throughout Game 1, MJ tormented Phoenix defenders with his skill, with his determination, with his unstoppable slashing ability. Whenever he tried, everything went his way that night, and the Bulls hit the table with a bang. They made a statement to everybody. Even playing away from home, they didn't feel the pressure like other human beings. That night, Chicago made it 1-0 on the series scoreboard. But in Game 2, the Suns realized how complicated it would be, because Michael Jordan had a night to remember. He was torching Phoenix's defense all night long. It didn't matter what Paul Westphal tried to do to slow him down. It didn't matter the adjustments, because that night, he was making every shot. However, that was just one detail in the incredible game he had that night. 42 points, 12 rebounds, 9 assists. In the NBA Finals, he starred in a near triple-double that looks like something out of a fantasy book. Jordan, with the help of Scottie Pippen, ran the offense that night to once again give the already weakened Phoenix Suns a shot in the arm. Mind you, they tried. Because their leader, Charles Barkley, had a historic performance that night. With 42 points, 13 rebounds, and 4 assists, he had one of the best nights when his team needed him the most. But in clutch time, there was no one better than MJ. With several big shots, he made it 2-0 in the series after playing the first 2 games away from home. However, the Suns were far from giving up, because in Game 3, away from his hometown, Charles Barkley once again led the Suns to victory with 24 points and 19 rebounds. In a spectacular offensive display, Phoenix scored up to 129 points at Chicago Stadium. But most incredibly, they were there to pull out the win despite Michael Jordan's 44 points. In a thriller that went into 3 overtimes, the Bulls were unable to close out the game in front of their fans. A victory that gave the Suns the oxygen they needed. They believed again. But in Game 4, the impossible happened. Michael started the game like a roller. It seemed like, in a way, he feared the Suns. He knew what they were capable of doing once they got their confidence back, and that's why he took it personally. From the low post, with 1, 2, or even 3 defenders on him, his touch from mid-range that night seemed divine. When he attacked the rim, the determination was evident. There was nothing the Suns' defense could do to counter him. He always found a hole in the paint. For 48 minutes of the game, Michael was completely unstoppable. Although Charles Barkley had a spectacular triple-double with 32 points, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists, Michael Jordan stole the show, because the 55 points he scored that night at Chicago Stadium went down in history forever. Just when the Suns were starting to believe, he would hit them with a hook like a boxer. Michael scored half of his team's points when they needed him the most, when they needed a leader to allow them to overcome the strongest opponent they had encountered in the 90s. But it was then, when Phoenix showed its mettle. Because in Game 5, also in Chicago because of the 2-3-2 format used at the time, Phoenix prevailed again. The 74 points scored by Barkley, Kevin Johnson, and Richard Dumas were too much for the Bulls' 2-man offense. Jordan was efficient one more night, taking the playmaker role and helping on the boards. In fact, he had 41 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists. But other than Pippen, the other 3 Bulls starters combined for 10 points. The supporting cast did not offer minimal service on a day when they needed it. And if the Bulls wanted to win the ring, they would have to do it in Phoenix. Or in other words, if the Suns could win both games at home, they would end Jordan's legacy forever. But we all know Jordan wasn't going to let that happen. Michael started tearing the Suns apart from long range, and that gave him the confidence to know that this was going to be his night. At no point in the series were the Suns able to counter him. At best, they were able to hurt his efficiency. But it seemed like Jordan had the secret formula to destroy them night in and night out. Of course, that didn't change in Game 6. In a much better game from the Bulls supporting cast, Michael knew how to find the open looks. He knew how to knock down his usual impossible shots from mid-range, and he knew how to find the holes in Phoenix's interior defense. Another masterful masterwork in which his airness added 33 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists. More than 1,000 miles away from Chicago and against one of the best teams he had ever faced, Michael showed his strength to get back to what he wanted. The Chicago Bulls, they got it done. They won the first three-peat of any franchise in nearly 30 years. Michael was in for a dream summer, a celebration, one befitting the best player in the world having done his homework. But it wasn't to be. Barely a month after winning that Game 6 in Phoenix, after emerging as the greatest athlete of all time, his father was murdered. In July 1993, a man took his life, and Michael's career changed forever. That Game 6 was his last game before retiring, because once he had reached the top, he realized that basketball didn't even motivate him. He couldn't make up for the death of a loved one that came at the most inopportune time. No opponent was sufficient to offer a challenge. But it's possible that his decision to quit could have changed if the outcome of that Game 6 had been different. While those finals served to prove that Michael Jordan was the best player in the world and a potential GOAT contender, Charles Barkley's legacy was forever tarnished. Not because he lost to the Bulls, as that's an experience many legends had to live through, but because he never came as close to winning a championship as he did in that 1993 season. He had the bad luck that in his most lethal version, he had to cross paths with the best player in the world, an unfortunate nightmare that, even to this day, is surely present in his head. Now, we have to answer the million-dollar question. Was Michael Jordan already the GOAT after 1993? Or was it his second three-peat that cemented his legacy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with all our latest content. Thanks for watching, and catch you in the next one.